Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh video. In this video, I'll be repairing this iPhone 11 that was given to me by a viewer. The back of the phone has sustained a large impact that has not only cracked the back significantly, but has dented the whole phone inward. As a result, there is a pressure mark on the LCD and the screen is lifting off in the lower right hand corner. What happened? Well, I was told it travelled at high velocity into the edge of a soda stream, an appliance that creates sparkling water. How one damages a phone using a kitchen appliance, I don't know, but the previous owner described the incident as unfortunate. They went on to say that they were thinking of just throwing it away. In the end, they chose the right option, to send it over so I can give it another life. As I've mentioned in the past, I'm not a repair shop and I don't do repairs for other people, but occasionally I do accept donations like this one. After setting up the phone, we can see this is an iPhone 11 128GB on iOS 15.1. With that, I think it's time to get inside this phone and see how the internals are looking. I'll start by removing the two pentalobe screws from the bottom of the iPhone before prying up the display. Usually I'd use a heat plate to soften the adhesive, but as the screen has already started to lift, I was able to pry it up without any. With the display free, I can work on getting its connections unplugged. I'm hoping to be able to reuse this display after repairing the back, although this will ultimately depend on whether the pressure mark goes away. I'll be sure to disconnect the battery connection first to eliminate the chance of shorting out the motherboard. For the iPhone 11, the battery connection is hard to access as the two display cables run over the top of the bracket. However, once unplugged, the display can be removed. Internally, the iPhone 11 looks a lot like the iPhone XR, only it has an extra camera. As for this phone, well, it's got some internal damage. The battery is protruding significantly as a result of the impact from the rear. This is what would have been causing the display's pressure mark. Given this, and the fact that the battery is a few years old, I won't be reusing it. To replace the back glass, it isn't easy and is so much more involved than it might first seem. There are only two ways to repair it. The first option is to replace the glass. However, the industrial strength glue that holds it on can only be removed with lasers. While I've shown this route before, it's messy and uses specialized equipment that is not feasible for DIY repairers. So I'll be going the other route. This involves removing everything from the old housing and transferring it to a new one. However, I'll be going about this slightly differently than I usually do. After having taken out both the rear and front cameras, I'll remove the logic board from the phone. Up at the top, I'll remove one of the antennas. It also acts as an extension cable for the volume buttons. This is actually a really good idea and use of space inside the phone. Like many of the components inside the iPhone, it doesn't use just one type of screw. Throughout the repair, you'll need to keep swapping out between Phillips, tri-wing, and a standoff bit. There's also a few pesky hidden screws that you'll have to uncover to be able to fully remove certain components. At the lower section of the phone, I'll begin by removing the SIM reader before working my way down to the charging port assembly. Here you'll find the speaker and vibration motor, which Apple calls the Taptic Engine. These will need to come out first before we can unscrew and remove the charging port itself. For such a small area, there is a massive amount of screws that we'll need to keep track of. Remember, we've got to actually get this phone back together once we replace the housing. Once the charging port has been unscrewed, the two microphones can be detached from the bottom grills using a pry tool. Next, the whole flex cable assembly can be unadhered and removed from the phone. Lastly, I'll remove some plastic protective pieces from the battery area, the SIM eject pin, and one last antenna up by the rear camera. With that, it's time for some new pieces. I have a new housing, display adhesive, and a new battery. The housing already comes with a few of the smaller components installed, Yes, there are even smaller parts we didn't remove from the old housing. I usually go through the painstaking process of removing everything, but this time around I thought I'd show you the slightly easier method. Time is money, and this saves less experienced repairers a lot of time. However, one issue I always face when buying a housing with parts installed is that they never put them in right. As you can see, the wireless charging coil and one of the antennas isn't stuck down correctly. I'll need to rectify this before proceeding to reassemble the phone. The new housing came installed with the buttons, mesh grills for the speaker and microphones, the display clips, wireless charging coil, and one of the antennas. This meant we didn't have to remove any of these from the old housing. At the lower section, the charging port and surrounding components can be installed. At this point, you can probably understand where I'm coming from when I say I believe this phone is too hard to repair. When the back of the iPhone was metal, this wasn't an issue, as very few people needed to replace the back of their phone. But after putting glass on the back, it makes it break easier, but just as hard to replace. Not to mention dangerous if you leave it as is, as you can easily cut your fingers on the broken glass. The SIM reader in this iPhone 11 is modular. This means if you swap it out with a dual SIM reader from a Chinese iPhone, you can install 2 SIM cards. Apple only offers a dual nano SIM option in China for some reason, but there isn't anything stopping you from upgrading a normal iPhone, at least not yet. At the top of the phone, I can install 2 antennas and a bracket for the LED flash. Next, it's finally time to install the logic board. I'll carefully route the flex cables, ensuring that none are trapped under the board itself. After which, the flex cables and any brackets securing them in place can be attached. After attaching all of the main flex cables, I can proceed to install the front camera and Face ID assembly before the rear cameras are attached and secured down with their metal bracket. It's now come time to test the phone before we completely finish assembling it. You don't want to leave this to last, as if there's an issue, you may have to completely disassemble the phone. I'll briefly attach the original display and a new battery to test things out. Thankfully, the phone posts and continues booting up into iOS. Shortly after, we're greeted with Apple's typical not genuine message, this one in relation to the new battery. Apple has therefore gone and purposely disabled the battery health function in settings. On a positive note, the display is no longer discolored as the pressure from the old battery has been relieved. Oddly, the new housing had display adhesive already applied. However, it's been exposed to the air, so I'm not confident that it will properly hold the screen on. As I have a replacement, I'll remove it and fit the new adhesive. Once aligned at the top, it can be fully seated into place. Once the plastic protective film is removed, we can continue reassembly. I'll install the new battery, which already has its adhesive strips applied. Once aligned, it can be pressed down firmly into place. For the display, I'll need to make sure all of the old adhesive is removed from it, to ensure a flush fit with the new frame. Using a spudger, I can pry all the adhesive off. It's now time for the display panel to be attached to the logic board of the phone. I'll firstly connect its 3 connections before attaching the battery and the 2 brackets covering the flex cables. These are all secured into place with tri-wing security screws, and therefore they require a special bit. Next, I can wipe down the internals with a microfiber cloth to remove any dust or fingerprints inside the phone before removing the plastic protective film securing the new display adhesive. With that, the display panel can be attached to the phone. After positioning the top in place, the remainder of the screen can be firmly pressed down. Lastly, I'll reinstall the SIM card tray and the 2 pentalobe screws at the bottom of the iPhone. After removing the plastic protective film from our new back panel, We're done. So this is it. An iPhone 11 128GB black in working condition with a new battery and back housing. I'd like to thank the viewer for sending it in. Not only did we save this phone, but it also made for a great video. As for the future of this phone, it's going up for sale on my online store. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the restoration playlist for more videos just like this one. And if you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.